Okay, so on the second part of this activity, we're going to use what we've already created with this single flip-flop, and now we're going to actually tie in a second D flip-flop, another 74-74, to start to act as our counter. So things to consider, right? Everything is already set up. However, the Q naught, right, is going to be tied into our second clock, and that's what's going to be controlling our second clock. And then from there, everything else is pretty straightforward. So we have to have our clear and our preset tied into high. So we're just going to have to tie those in very, very easily. We're only going to use the LEDs that we've already created to go ahead and now, instead of act as Q and Q naught, to act as Q high for 2 and then Q high for 1, which is technically B and A. So again, B is going to be our least significant digit. So this is the one that's going to be counting at the highest rate. And then A, which is our newest D flip-flop, which is technically the second side of the IC, is going to be our most significant digit. It's going to be counting this low. So it's going to be 1 off, 2, and that's off. So we have 3, 1, and 1. So those are both going to be on. That's as high as we can count on this counter. So let's go ahead and get back into it. So we're going to jump back into our design. Let's go ahead and delete D for now. Okay, click delete. And so the first thing that we need to do is find our Q naught, which is inverted. So here, we're going to go ahead and tie this back in. So I'm going to click. Again, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's not in between one of these pins. I'm going to click. So just to find out where it is. So we have clock 2 there is 14, 13, 12, pin 11. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to tie that in right there. I'm going to change the color here in just a second. So when everything lined up. And let's go red. It's technically a line in. All right, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and tie, excuse me. Let's go ahead and tie our set into high. Excuse me, reset. Let's tie set into high. I don't know why this guy went up so high. Pull this down. It's parallel. Again, just to make it look tidy. Okay, and so now what we want to see is Q2 and Q1 both respectfully coming out to our LEDs. Okay, so we have output. Yeah, I'm just going to drop it in there. This is our first Q. So again, let's just make sure. So that's going to be QB. So that's going to be going to our first one on the right. So let's make sure that's tied in correctly over here. So I clicked already once. Again, just to make it look tidy. I see lines there and line there. Okay. And now let's go ahead and find output 2. Tie it in here. And again, tie it nice and tight. Now I'm actually going to want to pull this up and put it here and here. Now this is a little confusing when you look at this from this. All right, come on. From this position, right? So this is going to be tied in the same bit here, right? So up into this line. Now if I put it in to these two posts, there still is a post above it here, here, and here. So just know that that's what's going on there. Okay. So I have Q output 2 going to my cathode, or excuse me, anode. And then I have the output 1 tying in to that one there. And that's going to be the anode of that one. These are all getting tied back into your ground. And let's just see what else we need to tie in. So we have ground going to clock. We have that. We have ground going back to ground. What we don't have here now is our Q0 2 going back into our data input. So let's go ahead and add that back in, just like we did here with input 1 going into inverted output. Let's do the same. So we have input output. Let's find where that input 2 is. Again, they call that input 2. That's really your data. Okay, and let's check this. So let's click off of it. We have our power there. So let's go ahead and start it up. So we have our power coming in. So now when we start to cycle through, click it off. Now again, remember this input here, once we finally get an input to D1, which is going to control the Q0, that's when it's finally going to control the clock for our second flip-flop. Right, so this bottom flip-flop, once it cycles through once, is now going to start to control the second flip-flop. So we should see a second flip-flop going on there now. When we came in, when it was 1, 1, both high, that was our first input. So click. So now we have Q. That's 1. I click off again. Now we have 2. That's 3. And again, when I click this off again, both of these two LEDs should go off. And that's 0. Again, counting in digital, 1, 2, so that's 1, 0. And now we're at 1, 1, which is 3. 0, 0, off. One more time. 0, 1, which is 1. 1, 0, which is 2. 1, 1, which is 3. And again, every time I click that, what's going on is this clock signal sending in a clock. Initially, here, we have no signal going in. Once I click it, now we have a signal going into 1. When I click it again, what happens is that Q0 flips. It sends a signal into input, which is digital, which sends it to Q0. That then sends it up to our second clock, and that activates a second flip-flop. So now I send it here, right? So I sent it in 1. Remember, this remembers a bit, which is now how I can save that number there. And that then remembers that it's Q1. Okay? Or Q2, excuse me, that's Q2. I click it again, and now we have both Q1 because I'm still saving that data point at D, which is sending it in to clock 2, which is sending it eventually out to both Q and Q0, and then again off. Okay, hopefully this is helpful. The next thing you're going to want to do is remove these two wires, which is why we put these LEDs all the way out here in the first place, and see if you can now wire this to include a second 7474 to do a 15-bit counter. Right, so we'll need 2 more LEDs, a second 7474, wiring the output of this now into the next clock in, and then basically repeating this function of this 7474 into the 4th D flip-flop to count through all those. And that'll be another video, but let's see if you can figure that out, and hope you can. I know you can. So thank you very much, and have a good night.